After my husband left me for a younger woman, I worked 16-hour shifts as a maid to feed my twins. One night, desperate, I texted asking for help but sent it to my millionaire boss instead. His reply made me cry nonstop. "I am glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you are watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." My name is Maya Bennett, and I never thought a wrong number would save my life. It was 4:00 in the morning when I finally collapsed onto my secondhand couch. Every muscle in my body screaming from another 16-hour shift. The twins had been asleep for hours, thank God. Curled up together in the single bed we all shared in our tiny studio apartment, Grace's tiny fingers were wrapped around Logan's arm, and for a moment, watching them sleep so peacefully, I almost forgot how desperate our situation had become. Almost. Then I opened the refrigerator, and reality hit me like a slap. Empty. Completely empty, except for half a bottle of expired milk and a wilted apple. The last $25 I had earned cleaning Mrs. Thompson's house had gone to keeping the electricity on. Tomorrow, I had to clean the Carter estate again, but that paycheck would not come for another week. My babies would wake up hungry in a few hours, and I had nothing to give them. I sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the cold refrigerator, and cried silent, exhausted tears that I had been holding back all day. 7 months. It had been 7 months since Jason walked out, leaving me with twin 3-year-olds and a pile of bills I never knew existed. He had taken everything. Our savings, our car, even the grocery money I had been saving for weeks. "I need space to find myself," he had said, packing his designer clothes while the twins cried in their cribs. "This is not the life I wanted, Maya. You will figure it out. You always do. Figure it out." As if raising 2 babies alone while working multiple cleaning jobs was some kind of puzzle I could solve with enough determination. I picked up my cracked phone and scrolled through my contacts. Who could I call at 4:00 a.m.? My sister Laura had already told me she could not help anymore after I had borrowed $60 last month. My mother lived across the country and barely made ends meet on her Social Security. My few friends had disappeared when my life became too complicated, too messy for their perfect suburban existences. The twins stirred in their sleep, and Grace let out a soft whimper. She had been fighting a cold for days, and I could not even afford the medicine the pediatrician had recommended. The guilt was eating me alive. What kind of mother lets her children go hungry? What kind of mother cannot provide basic necessities? With shaking fingers, I started typing a message to Laura, even though I knew she would probably ignore it. I had to try. "Laura, I know it is late, and I know you are tired of helping, but the twins have not eaten since yesterday morning. I have $22 until next Friday and no food in the house. Could you please lend me $45 for groceries? I will pay you back as soon as I get paid. I am desperate." I stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. My pride was already shattered anyway. What was a little more humiliation? The reply came faster than I expected, and my heart nearly stopped when I read it. "Maya, I had no idea things were this difficult for you. Of course I will help. In fact, I think we need to talk about a long-term solution. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning at 9? And please do not ever hesitate to reach out when you need help. That is what we are here for." I read the message 3 times confused. Laura had never been this warm, this understanding. She had never offered long-term solutions or invited me to any office. The language was too formal, too professional. Then I looked at the number I had sent the message to, and my blood turned to ice. Andrew Carter, my employer, the millionaire whose Carter estate I cleaned twice a week, whose perfectly organized life I glimpsed while scrubbing his marble floors and dusting his expensive art collection. I had sent my desperate plea to Andrew Carter. Panic flooded through me as I realized what I had done. I had just admitted to my wealthy employer that I was broke, desperate, begging for money like some kind of charity case. He would probably fire me immediately. Who wants their house cleaner airing their personal problems? Who wants to deal with someone so unstable they cannot even send a text to the right person? My hands were shaking as I typed back quickly. Mr. Carter, I am so sorry. That message was not meant for you. Please ignore it. I will see you Thursday for my regular cleaning schedule. His response came within minutes. Maya, do not apologize, and that offer stands. 9 o'clock tomorrow. I will text you the address to my office downtown. We will figure this out together. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Figure this out together. What did that even mean? Andrew Carter barely acknowledged my existence when I cleaned his house. He was always in his home office, taking important calls or typing away at his computer. The few times we had interacted, he had been polite but distant the way wealthy people treat service workers. But there was something in his message that made me cry again. Not from desperation this time, but from something I had not felt in months. Hope. I looked at the twins, still sleeping peacefully, unaware that their world might be about to change. Grace's fever had broken, and she looked more comfortable than she had in days. Logan was sucking his thumb, a habit he had developed since his father left. They deserved better than this. They deserved a mother who could provide for them, who did not have to choose between food and medicine, between electricity and rent. Maybe Andrew Carter was offering me a chance to become that mother. I did not sleep the rest of the night. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the city wake up, trying to imagine what Andrew Carter could possibly want to discuss with me. By the time the twins woke up, I had made a decision. I was going to that meeting. Whatever he was offering, whatever he wanted to discuss, I was going to listen. Because when you are drowning, you do not question the person throwing you a lifeline. You just grab on and hold tight. At 8:30 the next morning, I dropped the twins off at the Riverview Community Daycare, using my last $22 to pay for their care. The receptionist, Mrs. Rivera, looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "Rough night, honey?" she asked gently. I managed a weak smile. Every night is a rough night lately, but maybe today will be different. As I walked toward downtown, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart raced, thinking it might be Jason. But when I opened it, I found an address and a simple message. "See you soon. Everything is going to be okay." The message was from Andrew Carter, and for the first time in 7 months, I believed that maybe, just maybe, everything really would be okay. But as I stood in front of the gleaming office building, looking up at its 28 floors of glass and steel, I could not shake the feeling that this meeting would change my life in ways I could not even imagine. Little did I know how right I was. Andrew Carter's office was nothing like I had expected. While his mansion screamed wealth and perfection, this space felt warm, lived in. Family photos lined his desk, and comfortable leather chairs faced a wall of windows overlooking the city. He stood as I entered, and I noticed something I had never seen when he was in his home office. Genuine concern in his eyes. "Maya, thank you for coming." He gestured to one of the chairs. "Please sit. Can I get you coffee?" "Water?" he asked. I shook my head, too nervous to trust my voice. My best dress was a faded blue shift I had bought at the Salvation Army thrift store, and I felt completely out of place in this sophisticated space. Andrew sat across from me, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "I imagine you are wondering why I asked you here," he said finally. I nodded, clutching my purse tighter. "Mr. Carter, about that text last night. I really am sorry. I know it was inappropriate, and I understand if you need to find someone else to clean your house." He held up a hand, stopping me. Maya, I did not ask you here to fire you. I asked you here because I should have offered help months ago. Months ago, I stared at him confused. I do not understand. Andrew leaned back in his chair, studying my face. How much do you know about your husband's employment history? The question caught me off guard. Jason. He worked in sales for various companies. Why? Specifically, what did he tell you about his last job? I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something in Andrew's tone that made me uneasy. He said the company downsized. He was laid off about a year ago, which is why money got tight. Andrew was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out a file from his desk drawer. Maya Jason worked for me at Carter Holdings. He was not laid off. The room started spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to process what he had just said. That is impossible. Jason never mentioned working for you. He would have told me. Would he? Andrew's voice was gentle but firm. Did he tell you about the multiple late-night meetings? The unexplained bonuses that never seemed to make it into your household budget? The business trips that lasted longer than they should have? Each question hit me like a physical blow. Yes, there had been late nights. Yes, Jason had mentioned bonuses that somehow never improved our financial situation. And the business trips, I had always wondered why he needed to travel so much for local sales positions. You are saying he lied to me. I am saying he has been lying to you for a very long time. Andrew opened the file and pulled out several documents. Jason was my assistant manager for 20 months. He was actually very good at his job when he bothered to show up, but there were problems. He handed me a performance review dated 9 months ago. Even upside down, I could see it was not positive. What kind of problems? Attendance issues, missed deadlines, and toward the end, there were concerns about his commitment to the company. I thought about those last months before Jason left. How distracted he had seemed. How often he had come home late with flimsy excuses. How he had started picking fights with me over small things as if he was looking for reasons to be angry. When exactly did he stop working for you? 4 weeks before he left you. The timeline hit me like a truck. 4 weeks. But he told me he was still working. He left for the office every morning. Andrew's expression grew grim. Maya, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. In those last few months, did Jason ever ask you to sign any papers, banking documents, maybe something about the house? My mouth went dry. How did you know that? What did you sign? I tried to remember, but those last months were such a blur of sleepless nights with the twins and constant worry about money. I do not know. He said they were just routine things, insurance papers, maybe something about refinancing the house to get better rates. I was so tired, and he seemed so stressed about money. I just signed whatever he put in front of me. Andrew closed his eyes briefly, as if he had been hoping for a different answer. Maya, I think there is a lot more going on here than just a man who left his family. I think you need to check on some things. What kind of things? Your bank accounts, your mortgage, any investments or savings you might have had. The way he said it made my stomach drop. Why? What do you think happened? Andrew leaned forward, his voice serious. I think Jason has been planning his exit for a long time, and I think when he left, he took more than just himself. I felt tears starting to form. I do not understand. Are you saying he stole from me? I am saying you need to check your accounts immediately. And Maya? There is something else. Something I probably should have told you sooner. My heart was racing now. What? The reason I know so much about your situation is not just because Jason worked for me. It is because he used to talk about you about the twins. He complained constantly about the financial pressure, about how having children had ruined his life, about how he felt trapped. Each word was like a knife in my chest. He said that he said a lot of things, but what bothered me most was how he talked about you, like you were a burden instead of a partner, like you were something he needed to escape from. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold together the pieces of my world that were crumbling with every revelation. So when I accidentally texted you last night, I already knew you were struggling. I have been watching you work yourself to exhaustion, cleaning my house, while your husband disappeared from his responsibilities. I have been wondering how long it would take before you reached out for help. You were watching me. Andrew's face softened. Not in a creepy way, in a concerned way. You always looked so tired, so stressed. And after Jason stopped showing up for work, I kept expecting him to mention that he had lost his job, but he never did, which made me wonder what he was telling you. I thought about all those mornings when Jason had left for work, dressed in his business clothes, carrying his briefcase. Where had he been going if not to Andrew's company? Mr. Carter, can I ask you something? Of course, and please call me Andrew. Why do you care? I mean, you barely know me. I'm just someone who cleans your house twice a week. Andrew was quiet for a moment, then walked to the window overlooking the city. Because I have been where you are. Maya, not financially, but emotionally. I know what it is like to discover that someone you trusted, someone you built a life with, has been living a completely different reality behind your back. Your wife, ex-wife, I asked softly. And when I found out the truth about her, I had resources to protect myself, lawyers, accountants, investigators. You do not have those resources, but I do. I felt overwhelmed by everything he was telling me. Andrew, I appreciate your concern, but I cannot let you get involved in my personal problems. It would not be right. He turned back to me, his expression determined. Maya, I am not offering charity. I am offering partnership. I need someone I can trust to help manage some of my properties. Someone detail-oriented, reliable, honest someone who understands hard work. You are offering me a job. I am offering you a real position with real responsibilities and real pay. But first, we need to figure out exactly what Jason has done. Because if I am right, you are going to need help putting your life back together. As I sat in that office, looking at this man who was offering me hope, when I had all but given up, I realized that my accidental text had not just been a mistake. It had been a lifeline thrown to me at exactly the moment I needed it most. But I also realized that if Andrew was right about Jason, the worst was yet to come. The bank manager's face told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. Ms. Reynolds had been handling my accounts for 5 years, and I had never seen her look so uncomfortable. Mrs. Bennett, I am afraid there has been some unusual activity on your accounts. Andrew sat beside me in the small office, his presence both comforting and surreal. 24 hours ago, he had been just my employer. Now he was the only person standing between me and complete financial ruin. What kind of activity, I asked, though my stomach was already dropping. Ms. Reynolds pulled up my account information on her computer, then turned the screen toward me. Your checking account was closed 6 weeks ago. The savings account was emptied and closed 8 weeks ago, and your joint credit cards have been maxed out. The numbers on the screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. $0 in checking, $0 in savings, $1,680 in credit card debt. That is impossible, I whispered. I never closed those accounts. The accounts were closed by your husband. Using his power of attorney privileges on the joint accounts, he withdrew all funds in cash. Andrew leaned forward. How much total was withdrawn? Ms. Reynolds checked her screen again. From the savings account, $13,500. From checking, approximately $2,600. Plus, he took cash advances on both credit cards, totaling the $16,000 in debt and over $32,000 in total withdrawals. Gone. But I never gave him power of attorney, I said, my voice barely audible. Ms. Reynolds pulled out a file folder. Actually, you did. Here is your signature on the paperwork. Dated 15 months ago. She showed me a document with my signature at the bottom. I stared at it, trying to remember, and then it hit me like a physical blow. 15 months ago, right after the twins were born, Jason had brought me papers to sign while I was still exhausted from the delivery, telling me they were just updating our banking information for the babies. I signed this in the hospital, I said numbly. I thought it was something about adding the twins to our accounts. Andrew's jaw was tight with anger. What about the house? Miss Reynolds' expression grew even more sympathetic. I was hoping you would not ask about that. What about the house? I repeated, dreading the answer. The mortgage was refinanced 6 months ago. Your husband took out a home equity loan for $50,000. The room started spinning. Where did that money go? I do not have access to that information, she said gently. But given that none of it went into your existing accounts, I assume it was deposited elsewhere. Andrew spoke up. Maya, do you still have the deed to your house? I nodded weakly. It is in our filing cabinet at home. We need to check it immediately. The drive to my apartment was silent. Andrew followed me in his car while I tried to process what I had just learned. Jason had not just left me. He had systematically stolen every penny we had destroyed my credit and apparently done something terrible to our house. My apartment looked even smaller and shabbier, with Andrew standing in it. I pulled out the filing cabinet and searched through the papers until I found the deed. The moment I saw it, I knew something was wrong. The paper was different, newer than it should have been. And when I read the details, my worst fears were confirmed. Andrew, I said, my voice cracking. My name is not on this deed anymore. He took the document from me and examined it carefully. When did you sign a quit-claim deed? I do not know what that is. It is a document that transfers ownership of property. According to this, you signed over your rights to the house 6 months ago. I sank onto my couch, the full scope of Jason's betrayal finally hitting me. Those papers he had brought me to sign, he said they were about refinancing to get better rates. He must have hidden the quit-claim deed in there. So legally, the house belongs entirely to him now, which means he could sell it without my knowledge. Andrew pulled out his phone. I am calling my attorney. We need to find out if the house has been sold. While he made the call, I sat there trying to understand how I had been so completely fooled. All those months of struggling to pay bills, all those nights I had lain awake worrying about money. And Jason had been systematically stealing from us while planning his escape. Andrew hung up and sat beside me. My attorney is checking the property records now, but Maya, there is something else we need to discuss. What could possibly be worse than what I have already learned? The reason I am helping you is not just because you accidentally texted me. I looked at him confused. What do you mean? Andrew was quiet for a long moment, then got up and walked to my small window. 4 years ago, my wife cleaned out our accounts and disappeared. She left me a note saying she had found someone else, someone who could make her happier. I am sorry. That must have been devastating. It was. But the worst part was not losing her. The worst part was realizing how long she had been planning it, how she had manipulated me into signing documents, into trusting her with financial decisions, into believing we were building a life together while she was actually preparing to destroy it. He turned back to me, and I saw pain in his eyes that mirrored my own. When Jason started working for me, he reminded me of my ex-wife. Charming, convincing always, with a plausible explanation for everything. And when he started talking about feeling trapped by his family responsibilities, I recognized the language. I had heard it before. You think he was planning this from the beginning? I think he has been planning this since the twins were born, maybe longer. Andrew's phone rang, and he answered immediately. I watched his face grow tense as he listened. I understand. Thank you. He hung up and looked at me with an expression I could not read. The house was sold 5 weeks ago for $92,000. I felt like I was drowning. Sold? But where am I supposed to live? Where are the twins supposed to live? Maya, legally, you are homeless. You have been homeless for 5 weeks, but Jason never told you. The full scope of his cruelty hit me then. Not only had he stolen our money and sold our house, but he had left us literally homeless without even telling me. I had been working 16-hour days to pay rent on an apartment I could barely afford, not knowing that I should have been looking for a real place to live. There is more, Andrew said gently. The buyer was a property investment company. They are planning to flip the house and sell it for profit. But here is the interesting thing. The sale price was well below market value. Your house was worth at least $130,000. So he sold it cheap to get cash quickly. Or he sold it cheap because he was in a hurry because someone was forcing his hand. I looked at Andrew, trying to understand what he was implying. What do you mean, Maya? I think someone was pressuring Jason. I think he got himself into some kind of trouble, and he used your family's assets to get himself out of it. What kind of trouble? Andrew sat back down beside me, his expression serious. The kind that makes a man steal from his own children. As I sat there absorbing the magnitude of Jason's betrayal, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. My marriage, my home, my financial security, all of it had been an illusion while Jason systematically destroyed everything we had built together. But looking at Andrew, seeing the pain in his eyes that came from his own experience with betrayal, I also realized something else. I was not alone in this. For the first time in 7 months, someone was on my side. Andrew, I said quietly, there is something I need to know. What? Why are you really helping me? And please do not say it is just because you need an employee. He was quiet for a long moment, then met my eyes directly. Because when I was going through my divorce, I had every resource imaginable to protect myself. Lawyers, investigators, accountants, and I still barely survived it emotionally. You have 2 small children and no resources at all. If I do not help you, who will? But there is something else, is not there? Andrew sighed. Yes, there is something else. Something I have not told you about Jason's last weeks at my company. My heart started racing again. What? He was not just a poor employee, Maya. He was stealing from me, too. The revelation hit me like another blow. Stealing small amounts at first, petty cash supplies, things he thought I would not notice, but toward the end, he was embezzling money from client accounts. I felt sick. How much? Enough that I should have pressed charges. Enough that I could have sent him to prison. But you did not. No, because I did not want to destroy his children's lives over their father's mistakes. Andrew looked at me with an expression I could not read. But now I am wondering if that was the right decision. Because if I had handled it differently, maybe he never would have had the chance to do this to you. As the full weight of everything settled over me, I realized that Andrew Carter was not just offering me help. He was offering me justice. But I also realized that if Jason had been stealing from Andrew too, there were still pieces of this puzzle I did not understand. And I had a terrible feeling that the worst revelations were still to come. I should have known Jason would come back. Men like him always do, especially when they discover their victims are starting to rebuild. It had been 2 weeks since Andrew helped me understand the full scope of Jason's betrayal. 2 weeks of living in the guest house behind Andrew's mansion while his attorney worked to trace where our money had gone. 2 weeks of the twins playing in a real backyard while I learned to manage Andrew's property portfolio instead of just cleaning his floors. For the first time in months, I had started to believe that maybe we could build a real life again. Then Jason showed up. I was in Andrew's home office reviewing rental applications for one of his apartment buildings when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the window, I saw a familiar figure walking up the front steps, and my blood turned to ice. He looked different, thinner, with an expensive haircut and clothes I knew he could not afford. But it was definitely Jason, and he was carrying a briefcase like he was there on business. Andrew was in Seattle on a business trip not due back until evening. I was alone with the twins, and suddenly the security of the past 2 weeks felt as fragile as glass. The doorbell rang, followed immediately by aggressive knocking. "Maya, I know you are in there. We need to talk." I picked up my phone to call Andrew, but then heard Grace start crying from the guest house. The twins were napping, and Jason's shouting had woken them up. Anger flared in my chest. Even now, even after everything he had done, he was disrupting their peace. I opened the front door, but kept the security chain latched. "What do you want, Jason?" He looked me up and down, taking in my new clothes and my healthier appearance. "You look good, Maya. Better than I expected." "What do you want?" I asked again. "I want to talk to my children and to my wife, ex-wife. The divorce papers were filed last week." His expression darkened. "About that, I think you are making a mistake. We should talk about reconciliation." I almost laughed. "Reconciliation? You stole over $32,000 from us, sold our house without telling me, and disappeared for 7 months. What exactly would we be reconciling?" "I made some mistakes, I will admit that. But I have changed, Maya. I have learned from this experience, and I want to make things right. By showing up unannounced and demanding to see the children you abandoned." Jason's mask of contrition slipped slightly. "They are my children too. I have rights." "Do you?" "Because according to Andrew's attorney, when you abandoned us for 7 months without any support or contact, you pretty much forfeited those rights." Andrew's attorney, Jason's voice sharpened. "So it is true. You are living with him now. I am working for him and living in his guest house temporarily while I get back on my feet." "How convenient." Jason's tone turned ugly. "My wife shacking up with my former boss the minute I am out of the picture. Your former boss who you stole from. Your former boss who could have had you arrested but chose not to because he did not want to destroy your children's lives." Jason stepped closer to the door, and I instinctively stepped back. "About that," he said, his voice tightening, "I think Andrew may have exaggerated some things. You know how wealthy people are. They like to throw their weight around, make themselves look important. Are you saying you did not steal from him?" "I am saying there may have been some misunderstandings about expense accounts and petty cash. Nothing criminal." I stared at him, amazed by his ability to rewrite reality to suit his needs. "Just like there was a misunderstanding about our bank accounts and our house?" "That is different. That was about protecting our assets during a difficult time. Protecting them from who? From me. From your own children." Jason sighed dramatically. "Look, I know you are angry. You have every right to be, but I am here to make amends. I want us to be a family again." "Where have you been for 7 months?" "Jason, I was figuring some things out, working on myself, making sure I could provide for you and the kids properly." "And where exactly were you doing this self-improvement?" He hesitated for just a moment too long. "Different places. I was traveling, exploring opportunities, with whose money I had some investments that paid off." "What investments? You cleaned out every account we had." Jason's patience was clearly wearing thin. "Maya, I did not come here to be interrogated. I came here to see my children and discuss our future. We do not have a future, Jason. Do not we?" He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. "Because I have something here that might change your mind." "What is it? Custody papers filed yesterday? I am requesting full custody of Grace and Logan." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What I have been getting my life together, Maya. I have a stable income now, a proper home. Meanwhile, you are living in some rich man's guest house working as his personal assistant. What kind of environment is that for children? My hands were shaking with rage. You abandoned them. You disappeared without a word for 7 months. I was working on providing them with a better life, and now I can. I have a good job, a nice house, financial stability, all the things they need. They need their mother. Do they? Because from what I understand, you have been working 16-hour days, leaving them in daycare while you clean houses. That does not sound like quality mothering to me. I wanted to scream at him that I had been working 16-hour days because he had stolen all our money that I had been struggling to provide for them because he had abandoned us, but I could see in his eyes that he already knew all that. He just did not care. What do you really want, Jason? I want my family back. No, you do not. You never wanted this family. You told Andrew you felt trapped by us. So what do you really want? Jason studied my face for a moment, then smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You are right. I do not want the responsibility of raising 2 kids. But I want them. That does not make any sense. It makes perfect sense. You see, I have learned a lot in the past 7 months. I have learned about child support, about custody arrangements, about how the system works. And I have learned that sometimes having custody of children can be very financially beneficial. My blood turned cold. What are you talking about? I am talking about the fact that Andrew Carter is obviously very fond of you and the twins, fond enough to let you live in his guest house, fond enough to give you a job, fond enough to pay for lawyers to help with your divorce. Get to the point. The point is that I think Andrew would pay a lot of money to make sure you and the children are happy and secure. And if I have custody, well, that puts me in a very good position to negotiate. I stared at him in horror. You are planning to blackmail Andrew. I prefer to think of it as securing my children's future by using them as pawns in some sick scheme by recognizing their value and making sure it benefits their father. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He was planning to use Grace and Logan as leverage against Andrew to turn their well-being into a weapon for financial gain. You are disgusting. I am practical, and I am their father, which gives me certain rights that your boyfriend cannot override. He is not my boyfriend, is he? Because that is certainly what it looks like. Single mother, moves in with wealthy older man, starts working for him, becomes dependent on his generosity. There is a word for arrangements like that. The implication in his voice made me want to hit him. You need to leave now. I will leave when I have seen my children. No, Maya. You cannot keep them from me forever. I am filing for custody either way. The only question is whether we can work something out beforehand that benefits everyone. What kind of arrangement? Jason smiled again. And this time, it was definitely predatory. I am willing to give up my parental rights completely. Sign away all custody, all visitation, everything in exchange for a reasonable settlement. How much? $220,000. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. You want Andrew to pay you $220,000 to stay away from your own children? I want to be compensated for giving up my rights to children who will clearly be better off without me. It is a win-win situation. It is extortion. It is business. And if Andrew really cares about you and the twins as much as he seems to, he will see it as a bargain. I looked at this man I had once loved, this man I had built a life with, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger, someone capable of using his own children as commodities in a financial transaction. And if he refuses, Jason's expression hardened, then I will fight for custody, and I will make sure the court knows all about your current living situation, about how you are so dependent on your employer that you cannot even provide a stable home for your children without his charity. Those kids love me. They do not even remember you. Maybe not, but courts care about stability, financial security, proper home environments, all things I can provide, and you apparently cannot. As Jason stood there outlining his plan to destroy my family for money, I realized that Andrew had been right about one thing. Jason had not just left us. He had been planning his exit strategy for months, setting up scenarios that would allow him to profit even from his abandonment. But I also realized something else. Andrew was not the only one Jason was underestimating. He thought I was still the broken, desperate woman he had left behind. He had no idea what I had learned about him, about myself, or about how far I was willing to go to protect my children. I need time to think about this, I told him. You have 48 hours. After that, I will file the custody papers and we will let the courts decide. As I watched him walk back to his car, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time since this nightmare had started, I was not facing it alone. And Jason had no idea what he was really up against. Andrew returned from Seattle that evening to find me sitting on his back porch, watching Grace and Logan play in the sandbox he had built for them, just days after we had moved into the guest house. They were laughing, completely oblivious to the storm that was brewing around them. Maya, he said softly as he sat down beside me, immediately sensing my distress. What happened? I told him everything about Jason's visit, his threats, his disgusting plan to use the children as leverage for money. Andrew listened in silence, his jaw growing tighter with each detail. $220,000, he said when I finished. That is his price for staying away from his own children. I told him I needed time to think about it, but Andrew, I cannot let him take them. Even if it means fighting a custody battle, I might lose. Andrew was quiet for a long moment, watching the twins build sandcastles. Then he said, Maya, there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you weeks ago. What? The reason I have been helping you is not just because I recognize the signs of financial abuse from my own divorce. It is because Jason's theft from my company was much worse than I let on. I felt my stomach drop. How much worse? He did not just steal petty cash and supplies. Over the course of 9 months, he embezzled nearly $85,000 from client accounts. The number hit me like a physical blow. $85,000. Why did you not tell me? Because I was hoping to handle it quietly. I thought if I gave him a chance to pay it back, maybe he would learn his lesson. Maybe he would do the right thing for his family. But he did not. No, Andrew said bitterly. Instead, he quit without notice and disappeared, taking your family's money with him. Andrew pulled out his phone and showed me a series of bank records. So when he came back today, talking about having money, about being able to provide for the children, he has been living off stolen money, both mine and yours. He continued, after Jason sold your house and cleaned out your accounts, he moved everything to offshore accounts. He has been living quite well in the Bahamas for the past 5 months. The Bahamas, I felt sick. While I was working 16-hour days to feed his children, he was living on a tropical island with stolen money. It gets worse, Andrew said. He did not come back because he missed you or the kids. He came back because he has run through most of the money, and the authorities in the Bahamas were starting to ask questions about his visa status. Andrew showed me another document. He owes over $45,000 in gambling debts down there. That is why he needs more money now. So his plan to extort you is his way of solving his financial problems while avoiding any consequences for what he has done. I felt rage building in my chest, white hot and consuming. He is gambling away our children's future while living in paradise. And now he wants to sell them to the highest bidder. That is exactly what he is doing. Andrew, I cannot let him get away with this, but I also cannot risk losing Grace and Logan in a custody battle. Andrew turned to face me directly. What if I told you there was a way to make sure he never threatens you or the children again? What do you mean? I asked. I mean, what if we could prove that he is an unfit parent who has been living off stolen money? What if we could show the court exactly what kind of man he really is? How? I whispered. Andrew's expression grew determined. By giving him exactly what he thinks he wants. We are going to let him think he has won. We are going to arrange a meeting where I agree to pay him the $220,000, but we are going to record everything. You want to record him taking money to give up his children? I asked in disbelief. I want to record him admitting that he never wanted them in the first place. I want him on tape saying he is only using them for financial gain. I want evidence that will ensure he never gets custody of anything. The plan was dangerous, but it was also brilliant. What if he does not say enough to incriminate himself? I asked. He will. Men like Jason cannot help themselves. Give them an audience and they will brag about how clever they are. Andrew stood up and pulled out his phone. But first, there is someone I need to call. Who? My ex-wife. I stared at him in shock. Your ex-wife? Why? Because everything I told you about her was a lie. The words hit me like a slap. What? Andrew sat back down, his expression pained. I told you she cleaned out our accounts and left me for someone else. That was not true. Then what happened? She died, Maya, 4 years ago. Cancer. I felt the world tilt around me. Why would you lie about that? Because the truth was too complicated, too painful, and because I thought it might scare you away. I do not understand. Andrew took a deep breath. My wife, Emily, did not leave me. She fought cancer for 3 years while I watched helplessly. And when she died, she left me with an 18-year-old daughter who blamed me for not being able to save her mother. You have a daughter, had. Olivia has not spoken to me in over a year. She moved in with Emily's sister after the funeral and refuses to see me. Why? Because I made mistakes during Emily's illness. I was so focused on finding treatments on throwing money at the problem that I did not see how scared Olivia was, how much she needed me to just be her father instead of trying to be her mother's savior. Andrew's voice broke slightly. The night Emily died, Olivia looked at me and said, "You could not save her, and you cannot save me either. I do not want anything from you except to be left alone. Andrew, I am so sorry. I have been trying to reach her ever since. Sending letters, birthday gifts, graduation presents, she returns everything unopened. But what does this have to do with Jason? When I saw you struggling to provide for your children, when I saw how hard you were fighting to keep your family together, it reminded me of everything I had failed to do for Olivia. I thought maybe if I could help you succeed where I had failed, maybe I could find some kind of redemption. So helping me was about your daughter. At first, yes, but not anymore." Andrew looked at me with an intensity that made my heart race. "Now it is about you, about Grace and Logan, about the family we could build together if we can get Jason out of our lives permanently." The admission hung in the air between us, loaded with possibilities I had been afraid to consider. Andrew, I care about you too, more than I probably should, but I cannot let you get involved in this because you feel guilty about your daughter. That is not why I'm doing this anymore. Then why? Because I love you, Maya. I love those kids, and I want us to have a chance to be happy together without Jason's shadow hanging over us. The words hit me with unexpected force. You love me. I have loved you since the night you accidentally texted me. Since I saw a woman so desperate to provide for her children that she was willing to swallow her pride and ask for help. You have more strength and courage than anyone I have ever known. But what if we cannot stop Jason? What if he wins? Andrew took my hands in his. Then we will face it together. But I believe we can stop him. I believe we can give him enough rope to hang himself. And your daughter. What happens if she finds out you are building a new family? I do not know. Maybe she will hate me even more. Or maybe seeing me finally do something right will help her understand that I am trying to be better than I was. As I sat there holding Andrew's hands while my children played in the distance, I realized that we were both broken people trying to heal. Both of us carrying guilt and regret from our past relationships. Both of us afraid to hope for something better. But I also realized that sometimes broken people could help each other become whole again. Okay, I said finally. Let us do it. Let us trap him. Are you sure? I am sure. But Andrew, if we are going to do this, we have to be prepared for the possibility that it might not work, that we might lose everything. We will not lose everything, he said firmly. We will have each other. As I looked into his eyes, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe we could build something beautiful out of the ashes of our destroyed lives. But first, we had to make sure Jason could never hurt us again. And that meant giving him exactly what he thought he wanted, while making sure it destroyed him in the process. The next morning, Andrew called Jason and agreed to the meeting $220,000 in exchange for signing away all parental rights. The meeting was set for the following evening at Andrew's office downtown. What Jason did not know was that every word would be recorded and that by the end of the night, he would have given us everything we needed to make sure he could never threaten our family again. The trap was set. Now, we just had to wait for him to walk into it. The recording device was so small, I could barely see it clipped to Andrew's tie. His attorney, Michael Park, had assured us it would capture everything clearly. But as we sat in Andrew's office waiting for Jason to arrive, I could not stop my hands from shaking. He will be here any minute, Andrew said quietly. Are you ready for this? I nodded, though ready felt like the wrong word. How could anyone ever be ready to watch their ex-husband sell his own children for money? The elevator dinged in the hallway, and moments later, Jason walked into the office. He looked confident, almost smug, carrying a briefcase and wearing another expensive suit I knew he could not legitimately afford. Andrew, good to see you again. Jason's tone was falsely friendly as he shook Andrew's hand. Maya. He barely glanced at me. Please sit down. Andrew gestured to the chair across from his desk. I assume you have the paperwork. Jason opened his briefcase and pulled out several legal documents. Complete termination of parental rights. I will sign them as soon as we complete our transaction. Before we proceed, Andrew said carefully, I want to make sure I understand exactly what we are agreeing to. You are willing to give up all rights to your children in exchange for $220,000. That is correct, and you will never contact them again. Never try to see them. Never. Jason's voice was firm. As far as I am concerned, after tonight, they are not my problem anymore. I felt sick hearing him refer to Grace and Logan as a problem, but I forced myself to stay silent. Andrew leaned back in his chair. I have to ask Jason, do you not feel anything for them? They are your children. Jason shrugged. Look, I will be honest with you. I never wanted kids in the first place. Maya got pregnant and I did what I thought was the right thing by marrying her. But the truth is, having children ruined my life. How so? The expense, the responsibility, the constant demands. I could not travel, could not pursue opportunities, could not live my life because everything had to revolve around them. Andrew nodded sympathetically. That must have been frustrating. You have no idea. And Maya was no help. She was always tired, always stressed about money, always putting the kids first instead of focusing on our marriage. Is that why you started taking money from the household accounts? Jason's expression did not change. I was not taking money. I was reallocating resources to investments that would benefit the family long term. Investments in the Bahamas. For the first time, Jason looked slightly uncomfortable. I had some business opportunities that required offshore banking. Business opportunities that included gambling. Sometimes, business involves calculated risks. Andrew pulled out a folder. According to the records I have obtained, you lost over $65,000 at various casinos in Nassau. Jason's jaw tightened. Where I spend my money is my business. Even when it is money you stole from your family, I did not steal anything. That money belonged to both Maya and me. What about the money you took from my company? That was a misunderstanding about expense accounts. Andrew opened the folder and spread out bank records. $85,000 in fraudulent charges, Andrew said evenly. Money that belonged to my clients, not to you. Jason shifted in his chair. Look, I made some mistakes. That is why I am here, trying to make things right. By selling your children? Andrew asked sharply. By ensuring they have a stable future with people who can provide for them properly. Andrew leaned forward. And what about you? What will you do with the $220,000? Start fresh. Maybe move somewhere warm. Invest in some legitimate opportunities. Back to the Bahamas. Jason smiled. Maybe. The weather is nice there. I watched Andrew masterfully draw out admission after admission. Jason was so focused on getting his money that he did not realize he was confessing to everything on tape. One more question, Andrew said. If Maya had not found a way to support herself and the children, what would you have done? Would you have helped them? Jason actually laughed. Honestly, no. I figured she would eventually give up and put the kids up for adoption. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. You would have let your children go into foster care rather than support them. They are not really my responsibility anymore. I checked out of that life months ago. Andrew sat back, and I saw something cold flash in his eyes. Well then, I think we understand each other perfectly. Good. Jason reached for the papers. So, if you will just transfer the money to this account. He handed Andrew a slip of paper with banking information. Actually, Jason, there has been a change of plans. What do you mean? Andrew pressed a button on his desk phone. Michael, could you come in here, please? The door opened, and Michael Park entered, followed by 2 police officers. Jason's face went white. What is going on? You are under arrest, one of the officers said, for embezzlement, wire fraud, and child abandonment. You cannot do this. Jason jumped to his feet. We had an agreement. We had a conversation, Andrew said calmly, one that was recorded with the full knowledge of the district attorney's office. As the officers read Jason his rights and handcuffed him, he turned to me with pure hatred in his eyes. You planned this? You set me up. No, Jason, I said quietly. You set yourself up. We just gave you the opportunity to show everyone who you really are. This is not over, Maya. I will fight this. I will get a lawyer. With what money? Andrew asked. The Bahamas accounts have been frozen by federal authorities. The house sale proceeds have been recovered. You have no assets and no income. Michael stepped forward with another set of papers. Mr. Bennett, in light of your recorded statements tonight, the state is terminating your parental rights immediately. You will have no legal claim to those children ever again. As they led Jason away, he was still protesting, still threatening, still refusing to accept responsibility for any of his actions. After they left, I collapsed into a chair, emotionally drained, but feeling lighter than I had in years. It is over, Andrew said softly. He cannot hurt you anymore. What happens now? Now you and the twins can start your real life free from his threats, free from his manipulation. Michael gathered up the paperwork. The court will process the termination of parental rights within the week. After that, if Andrew wants to adopt the children, the process should be straightforward. The word adoption hung in the air between us. Andrew and I had not discussed that possibility, but suddenly it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. Would you want that, I asked him, to adopt Grace and Logan? Only if you want it too. Only if you think we could build something real together. Before I could answer, Andrew's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. "It is Olivia," he said, staring at the phone. "My daughter. Answer it." With trembling hands, Andrew accepted the call. "Olivia." I could hear a young woman's voice on the other end, though I could not make out the words. "Slow down, sweetheart. What is wrong?" Andrew's voice was filled with concern. The conversation continued for several minutes with Andrew mostly listening. Finally, he said, "Of course. Yes, I will come get you right now. We will figure this out together." He hung up and looked at me with tears in his eyes. "She is at the airport. She had a fight with her aunt and decided she wants to come home. She said she has been thinking about what her mother would have wanted, and she knows Emily would want us to be a family." "Oh, Andrew, that is wonderful." "There is more," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "She said she has been following me on social media and saw the pictures of you and the twins at the house. She said seeing me happy made her realize she wants to be happy too." As we drove to the airport to pick up Olivia, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. A desperate text sent to the wrong number had led to the destruction of one family and the creation of another. Olivia was waiting outside baggage claim, a young woman with her father's eyes and her mother's delicate features. When she saw Andrew, she ran to him and threw her arms around him. "I am sorry, Daddy," she sobbed. "I am so sorry for pushing you away." "You have nothing to apologize for," Andrew said, holding her tight. "I am just glad you are home." When Olivia finally pulled back, she looked at me with curious but friendly eyes. "You must be Maya. Dad has told me so much about you in his letters." "Letters?" Andrew looked embarrassed. "I have been writing to her every week, even though she was not reading them. I wanted her to know about you, about how you had changed my life." Olivia smiled. "I started reading them last month. That is how I knew I wanted to come home." 7 months later, Andrew and I were married in a small ceremony in his backyard. Grace and Logan, now officially his adopted children, toddled around in matching outfits, while Olivia helped them scatter flower petals. The guest list was small but meaningful. Michael Park was there with his family, and surprisingly, Andrew's former business partner had flown in from Chicago. But the most important guests were the people who had become our chosen family. Mrs. Rivera from Riverview Community Daycare wiped tears from her eyes as she watched the twins call Andrew Daddy for the first time during the ceremony. Even my sister Laura had come, finally understanding what real family looked like. As for Jason, he was serving a 6-year sentence for embezzlement and fraud. The last I heard, he was trying to appeal his convictions, still convinced that he was the victim in all of this. That night, as Andrew and I sat on our back porch watching Olivia push the twins on their swings, I thought about that desperate message I had sent 10 months ago. I had been asking for $45 for groceries, thinking that was all I needed to survive. Instead, I had found something I did not even know I was looking for. A real partner, a true family, and a love that did not demand I shrink myself to fit into someone else's idea of what I should be. "What are you thinking about?" Andrew asked, wrapping his arm around me. I am thinking about wrong numbers, I said, leaning into his warmth, and how sometimes the best things happen when you reach out to exactly the right person at exactly the right time, even when you do not know you are doing it. Especially then. As the sun set behind us, I watched my children play in their safe, loving home. And I knew that every struggle, every moment of desperation, every tear I had cried had been worth it to get to this moment. Sometimes the wrong message is exactly the right one after all. Now, I am curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I am leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.